On today's show, does Kawhi Leonard have anything left to prove? Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You were locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team, every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, been a Clipper fan for 20 years, been covering the team for 5 on my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and 3 right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell on the road to 8,000 subscribers, and you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Control your finances and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. Clipper Nation, in this episode, we're going to be talking about if Kawhi Leonard has anything left to prove. I'm going to be talking about that, what it's going to take for him to take us past the first round this year, and what it's going to take for him to get us to the top of the mountain that we've never been to before. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Does Kawhi Leonard have anything to prove in his career? No, absolutely not. He has nothing left to prove in his career. He's already one of the best small forwards to ever play the game. He's got 2 finals MVPs. He averaged 30 points as the best player on a title team. How many people in NBA history can say they did that? I'll tell you right now, nobody in the 60s averaged 30-plus points in a title run. Why do I say the 60s? Because that's the one decade I've studied back to front. There are very few guys that have done that. Kawhi Leonard being one of them. So no, he doesn't have anything left to prove in his career, in my opinion. He's solidified, stamped. He'd be a Hall of Famer first ballot if his career ended right now. But does he have anything left to prove as a Clipper? I believe he does. Because when Kawhi Leonard was brought here or signed here, and we made the trade for Paul George to join him, I and many other Clipper fans thought guaranteed ring at some point. You know, we're getting the best player arguably in the NBA doing something that no other player has ever done, which is to win a championship and win finals MVP and then leave. No one has ever done that. Kawhi Leonard was the first person to do it. And he comes to our team. And of course, we know how 2020 went. That was a championship expectations kind of season. Then 2021, that was another championship expectations kind of season. And that was the one where we're all going to be saying that what if for the rest of our lives. If Kawhi Leonard hadn't gone hurt, would that have been the year for us? I genuinely believe we make it out of the West. It's just a matter of could we have beaten the Milwaukee Bucks. But 2023, because Kawhi Leonard missed all of 2022, that wasn't really a championship year. 2023, we thought, okay, we're going into the season. I literally predicted 60 wins, like when I first became the host of this show, and that aged poorly because of our terrible process throughout the season. In my opinion, that's the most disappointing season in Clipper history. So that was a big disappointment, even though Kawhi Leonard, after a really rocky start health-wise, ended up turning up and having a really good second half of the season where he played at an all-NBA level. Looked insane in the playoffs in those first 2 games against the Suns, and then that was the last we saw of him. And then 2024, we make the trade for Harden. We are rolling at one point, first seed in the West, and then Kawhi Leonard, has the knee issues at the end of the season, and we don't really get a full version of Kawhi in the playoffs. So in this past season, we never had championship expectations, but we were going into the playoffs thinking we could make some noise. So we have failed in terms of if the goal was to bring in Kawhi Leonard and win a championship. I know it's hard. If anybody knows how hard it is, it's Clipper fans in terms of winning a championship. But we have failed in that goal. We've made it to 1 conference finals, and I think when we got Kawhi Leonard that we expected more. We definitely did. So for me, Kawhi Leonard has played 6 years now with the Clippers, but really 5 years with the Clippers because he missed all of the 2021-22 season. Now, I don't think any Clipper fan in their right mind can say that Kawhi Leonard is the greatest Clipper of all time. I think he's the best player to have played for the Clippers. Just like LeBron James in his prime in Miami was the best player to have played for the Miami Heat, but the greatest player in Miami Heat history is Dwayne Wade. The greatest players in Clipper history are Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. Now, did they ever have a season, or I shouldn't say a season, but did they ever reach the heights of 2021 Kawhi? No, they're just not as good at basketball. But because of the frequent injuries, Kawhi Leonard hasn't taken that mantle of the best Clipper of all time. Like when we first got him, I was like, oh my God, Kawhi is going to be the best Clipper of all time. He's going to take us to a ring, and it's going to be amazing. Kawhi Leonard is one of the better Clippers of all time. We did the Clipper Mount Rushmore episode with Grant Money Mona a couple weeks ago, and he had Kawhi on his Mount Rushmore. I had him right outside it. And again, the standard for being a Clipper Mount Rushmore guy isn't very high. You know what I'm saying? We have not done a lot in our history in terms of winning, and a lot of that's because of Donald Sterling's cheap ass. But Kawhi Leonard has a lot to prove, in my opinion, as a Clipper. We still need another conference finals run. And to be honest, if you think that he needs to win a championship as a Clipper, then that's a high bar. And so I don't know if he needs to win a championship just because I feel like that window might have closed and he's had so many injuries and stuff like that. But I think it would be nice for us to win a series again for starters. I mean, it really depends. When you say, what does Kawhi Leonard have left to prove as a Clipper? I don't think it's less about proving. It's more like, what does he have left to accomplish? You know, Actually, I'll put it this way. What will make someone say, and I shouldn't say someone, I'll just say me, because right now, because I'm the host and I'm a Clipper fan. So people look at me for my opinions about Clipper stuff. What would it take for me to say Kawhi Leonard's tenure with the Clippers was positive relative to expectations? I feel like saying championship would be kind of a cop out at this point, but that was the expectation. So, like, have I lowered it subconsciously because of what's happened? You can say that. But for me, I'd say at least to get to a second conference finals. I think that would make me say that this was a very positive experience, even though we may not win a ring. To get to multiple conference finals when we hadn't made it to one before he arrived, I think that would make me say, yeah, he was still a great Clipper. Even though it might not have gone exactly how we wanted, he still is a great Clipper. So I'd say another conference finals. But as far as his career, he's got nothing left to prove. He's a top 10 small forward all time. I think anybody that denies that is kind of ludicrous. If we want to talk about just how good he is at basketball, he might even be creeping into that top five. I think the guys that there's no conversation are Larry Bird and LeBron. I think that's a non-conversation. I think Kevin Durant's honestly a conversation, especially if you want to go with the peak of his career. I think, as much as it pains me to say it because he's my UMass brethren, I think he's got a case in his prime and at his best that he's better than Dr. J because of his shooting and his ball handling. Although I will say, I think Doc's usage of the big hands was way better from all the tape that I've watched, and his finishing and his athleticism is just on another planet compared to Kawhi. But I think Kawhi literally has a case to be the third best small forward of all time if you really want to go there. But because of the longevity, because of the lack, like when you compare him to someone like John Havlicek, who never got hurt and won 8 championships and was 6-0 in the finals and had incredible runs and was the best player on 2 championship teams, arguably, then it's hard. But again, whatever criteria you have, if Kawhi is not top 10 small forward, I think you're kind of being a hater. And I would definitely consider him a top 10 small forward, but not really for what he's done with the Clippers. You know what I'm saying? But that's my whole point. Career-wise, he's got nothing to prove. As a Clipper, I think he's got some more to prove. I think he's got some more success to be had. And coming up, going to be talking about how we can get past the first round this year. What is it going to take for us to win another series for the first time since 2021? I got to tell you a little something about Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth. I can't lie to you, I didn't even realize that I was still paying for the YMCA all these months because during the fires, the school wasn't letting us practice. So I, got my YMCA account and got a lot of my players in to the gym, and I forgot that I was still signed up for the YMCA. So I was literally losing money every single month, and I just started going back this year. And you know how I found out that I was paying for that? Monarch Money. It does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes automatically, and you can do it manually if it's not registering any of them. See clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. All right. So the LA Clippers and Kawhi Leonard. I said, what does he have left to prove? Let's win a series again. I think that would be a great treat for Clipper fans, for all of us, if we can win a damn series again and be in the second round, because here's the crazy part. I can literally count off the top of my head how many times we've been to the second round because it's so few. Like if we win a series, that already puts James Harden into maybe a top 10 Clipper of all time category. I'd say he might be top 20 already just by being all NBA and taking us to the playoffs in our first year out into it, and the sentimental value that last season held for a lot of our fans, including me. But to be in that top 10 conversation, I think he needs to win a series. Now, here's how many times we've won a series: 06, 2012, 2014, 2015, 2020, but bubble, woo, didn't even feel it. 2021, that's 6. And that's it. We've only been to the second round 6 times. 6 times. That's insane. So by definition, if we win one series, we're already gonna have a top 7 season in Clipper history. You know what I mean? In the LA tenure. If you want to go back to Buffalo, where there was less rounds, it's a different conversation. But we didn't win a series with Buffalo either. So what is it going to take, in my opinion? I think the most obvious thing is health. You know, when we're talking about winning a first round series, I think one thing we really have to avoid this year is having these ridiculous first round classics. Like, yeah, it's great for the neutral fan, but how many times do we finish in the 4th seed or the 5th seed and we have to play against the marquee Western Conference matchup that everyone's watching because it's elite basketball? Like, sick. I don't want to have a heart attack and lose in the first round anymore. I mean, you look at 2012 against Memphis. Absolute classic. Game 1, 27-point comeback. Fun fact, I shared this story with my first year as a host. I literally was crying in the first half because it had been 6 years since I'd seen the Clippers in the playoffs. My nerves were on another planet, and I was, 13 years old? I was crying in the first half because I was like, oh my God, Memphis is going to kill us. Like, we don't even belong here, and stuff like that. And then we make that comeback, and I literally cried tears of joy at the end of the game with my parents when Nick Young and CP and Reggie Evans and Blake brought us back into that game. And then you have that amazing Game 3, first Clipper playoff game in 6 years, rocking with the Clipper Nation all-in shirts. Rudy Gay misses that shot at the end. And then Game 4 that I had the pleasure of attending, overtime game, go up 3-1. Classic series that we win in 7. Almost blew a 3-1 lead. And we still won in 7 games in Memphis. Then the following year, another grueling 4-5 matchup in which we were up 2-0. Chris Paul made a game winner in Game 2 in a game that I was at, and then we lost 4 games in a row. And then how about the next year? Golden State, 3 versus 6, 7-game thriller. And Donald Sterling's situation in the middle of the series, I mean, that's a classic. That Game 7 was a classic. And I went to all the home games of that series, which was just a blessing. And then, of course, maybe the greatest series in Clipper history, I would say the best, Clippers-Spurs, when he knocked out the defending champs, Chris Paul's crowning moment. Game 7, classic. Game 2, classic. Game 5, classic. So many good games. And, of course, the greatest, Game 7, one of the only game-winning shots in NBA history in a Game 7 to join Sam Jones in 1962 against the Philadelphia Warriors. And, of course, Kawhi Leonard in 2019, he would later be joined by, and of course, Mario Ely's kiss of death in the second round of the 1995 Western Conference semis against the Phoenix Suns. Those are the ones off the top of my head I can name. I think those are the only Game 7 game winners in NBA history. If you want to name one in the comments that I'm forgetting about, go ahead. But what a classic. But my point is, and then even 2017, thrilling series against the Jazz, 7 games. 2021, insane series against the Mavs where we go 7 games and we are down 2-0 and we're down 3-2 and it's the only series in NBA history where the first 6 games were won by the away team. Kawhi Leonard's game 6, classic. And then 2023 would have been a classic if Kawhi hadn't gotten hurt. And then, of course, last year, amazing series. Game 1, classic. Game 2, classic. Game 4, classic. So, we got to stop getting involved in those. And how do we do that? Top 3 seed. Top 3 seed. And it all starts with Kawhi Leonard being healthy. Going into training camp fully healthy, exiting the playoffs fully healthy, having him on day 1, an opening night, and hopefully he can stay healthy. That is going to be huge. I think we're going to load manage him throughout the year on back-to-backs. Of course, I mentioned in the schedule released episode that we're going to only have 15 back-to-backs, which is less than last year. Theoretically, and I don't see this happening, if he only misses those back-to-backs, he will play 67 games, which would be amazing. But if he just plays 60, we're in business, I think, especially with how well equipped we are to have games without Kawhi that we're going to be great. We have so much firepower besides him, with the additions of Brad, with the additions of Chris. And of course, if it's a Zubats having a backup in Brook Lopez, I think that health is important. And then, of course, the support. Last year in the playoffs, Kawhi Leonard did well. He was our best player, but he was let down by a couple of guys. You can look at James Harden, but I think the most disappointing player, or 2 players, had to have been Bogdan Bogdanovic and Norman Powell. And having Bradley Beal, I think, will hopefully be better support. Guys being able to knock down open shots at a higher level. Derrick Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn had really big roles for us last year. And as great as they were defensively, they're not very good shooters. Now you have Chris Paul who can create shots. Now you have a stretch 5 in Brook Lopez. And we haven't had a stretch 5 since Ibaka. And Ibaka's tenure with the Clippers was very short-lived because he dealt with that back injury right away. So this is going to be a real new experience for us with Brook Lopez. And I think that'll add some firepower to our offense. So you have Brook, you have Beal, you have Chris Paul. I think to make it out of the first round, I think Kawhi Leonard honestly did play well enough to some degree, but he didn't play well enough if it means that our role players didn't come through. If you got more help from our role players, we probably win that series. Now, winning the championship, we're going to need another level from Kawhi. And coming up, I'm going to be talking about how he can get to that level. All right. So if Kawhi Leonard has anything left to prove, it's hopefully to get us past the first round again. But Kawhi Leonard, to get out of the first round, I think we need a top 3 seed and some better help from the supporting cast. But in terms of winning a championship, we're going to need him to hit another level. I talked about in the Toronto Raptors run, he averaged more than 25 points in every single series. Last season with us, he averaged 25 points a game in that series against the Denver Nuggets. And honestly, that's just not good enough. Shooting 18 shots a game, we're going to need 20 shots a game. We're going to need 27, 28 points from Kawhi, even with this amazing supporting cast. To win the championship, that's just what we're going to need. It is. And when you look at, let's just say the standard, right? Last season is SGA. You know how many points he averaged in the playoffs? 30, 29.9. So that's the standard. That's what we're going to need. Maybe not exactly 30 points, but at least 27, 28 points. How does he get to that number? Well, I think it all starts in the regular season. I think it all begins with playing through Kawhi more. I've said this ad nauseum on this show, but James Harden had the ball in his hands based on the time of possession stats on NBA.com for 4 more minutes than Kawhi in that Denver series. And Ty Lue even said, when your best player is out for the majority of the season, you have to play a different style of basketball, which implies that, this year with our best player healthy, we're going to play a different style of basketball, which is to play through our best player. Now, I've said this many times, the James Harden Zubats pick and roll might be our most efficient action in terms of getting a good shot. But in the playoffs, it's not all about getting good shots. It's about getting your best player a lot of shots. And if that's the case, we need to play through Kawhi more Kawhi isolation, more stuff for Kawhi to come off screens and get the ball in better areas. And then something Kawhi needs to do better is post up a little bit deeper. So then, you know, I'll give an example. I mean, of course, it's hard to describe this to somebody when you're not watching a game. But if Kawhi Leonard's, let's say, posting up or isolating in the mid-range area, mid-post, what they'll do sometimes is they'll bring a defender from the weak side and just sit him on the block, right? And usually you'll have Zubats in the dunker spot, but whoever's guarding the guy in the weak side corner will then tag Zubats to take away the first pass. If that's the case, Kawhi Leonard needs to either throw a good skip pass or he can still take the jumper over that defender before he makes the move, because when he makes the move, he's going to run into two bodies. Or that guy in the weak side corner can flash to the foul line or cut, so then he has to get picked up. So then Kawhi's back in isolation. So that's just a specific example. But if Kawhi's posting up closer to the block, that defender can't just come sit there. He has to hard double, and now that pass to Zubats is much closer. That pass to the weak side corner is much closer. Kawhi can turn baseline away from the double, and that person is flirting with a defensive 3-second violation if he's not fully doubling. So I think Kawhi, if he can get deeper position before he catches the ball, that would be great in the playoffs. And then when he gets the ball, he's got to go quickly before the double comes. I think that's one thing that Kawhi does worse than MJ and Kobe. And me comparing him to those guys is just very high praise, because those are the guys that he, admired in terms of play style. I know he loved Allen Iverson, but in terms of play style, he says the guy that he looks at the most are Kobe and Michael Jordan. And I think one thing that they were so good at, besides moving off the ball, is when they got the ball, they're just working so quickly off the catch, especially Mike when I watch the film. So before the double comes, before the load up comes, you get it, you go. And, that's also going to come down to what kind of shape Kawhi's in, what kind of fitness level he's in. And I think having a full season under his belt where he's hopefully not too overtaxed and he's been in that rhythm and we've played through him as our best player, that will allow him to be in the best shape, not just physically, but in the sense of like his best form. You know what I mean? So we got to build all this in the regular season. We have to be more of a Kawhi Leonard team this season, as much more than a James Harden team. And again, in the regular season, Zubats, James Harden pick and roll is our best action probably. So it's kind of like a dilemma, right? You might not be going to your most efficient action. It might be very stagnant with Kawhi ISO. But the main thing is to have Kawhi be in rhythm, not have Kawhi sacrifice. Because in the playoffs, you want to live and die with Kawhi. You don't want to live and die by James, because history says you're going to die at some point. So you want to get Kawhi in that mode, in that killer mode, in that I'm not sacrificing mode. I'm getting 20 shots a game off. That's what we want to see. That's what I want to see. And I think a lot of Clipper fans will agree with me, because Kawhi, the one thing you can't knock about this guy, his efficiency. When he gets the shots off, he's efficient. He averaged 54, 40 and a half, 78 splits. Now, the 78 free throws percentage is no good for his standards. But I'm okay with the little efficiency drop if it means more shot attempts. I would rather have him average 28 on 48% shooting than 25 on 50. I would. More points. More points for our best player. Less deferring. Less, relying on these role players to make shots. Because at the end of the day, who's the champion? Who's the guy that's top 75? Who's the guy that's a top 10 small forward? Kawhi Leonard. Not these other guys. So, the one thing I loved about Kawhi's Raptors run, in Game 7 against Philly, he shot 39 times in a game. 39. And they won. Sometimes you got to just empty the clip. And that's one of my criticisms of Kawhi and at times Kevin Durant as scorers, is I feel like their quiet nature, their passive nature sometimes will not demand the ball enough. James Harden literally will make you give him the ball. He'll stand there and just go at that like this. That's how you know he's demanding the ball. And he won't space sometimes to get the ball. I need Kawhi Leonard to have a little more of that. You know what I'm saying? Not just play through the flow. Not have conversations where we're like, Kawhi's not getting the ball enough. Kawhi's not in rhythm. We should start out games feeding Kawhi and getting him going. That should be a point of emphasis, in my opinion. Because if we're going to win a championship, it's going to be behind the back of Kawhi Leonard. It's that simple. So that's what I have to say. Does he have anything left to prove in his career? No. Does he have anything left to prove for the Clippers? I believe so. I think to make it a successful tenure with us, I think you got to get to the conference finals again. or else I think it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment. Now, he's still going to be one of the best Clippers of all time, but the bar wasn't high. And if we're being honest, championship was the expectation when we got him. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports and NBA content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.